LGBTQ people attacking other LGBTQ people is probably coming out of feeling bullied, othered, traumatized, not wanting to upset dad, not wanting other people like us to confuse the straights.
Time for everybody's favorite part of the podcast. Everybody except me, that is, because I die a little inside and lose brain cells. But it's time for everybody's favorite part of the podcast, where I react to mind-numbingly dumb TikToks from the alphabet people. Up first, this teacher has a non-binary alpaca that they use to teach kids, I guess.
Hey y'all, let me introduce you to our non-binary alpaca. The kids voted on a gender-neutral name, Alex, for them. Alex was there to help me during the really quiet moments when nobody would talk during virtual learning. Yes, they were so quiet! But then I also took it as an opportunity to teach my students about how to respect people's pronouns. Did Alex ever get misgendered? Yes. But then it opened up some teachable moments about what to do when that would happen. For example, hey Mr. Vung, did he just wake up from his nap? Oh, do you mean did they wake up from their nap? Yeah, they just did. I would apologize quickly, make the correction, and move on. I started off modeling how to correct somebody, and then afterwards my students would correct each other whenever somebody would misgender Alex here. Representation in the classroom matters. My kids were 5th graders, and they still got a kick out of Alex. Oh yes, and here's Alex's friend, Lincoln the Llama, who goes by pronouns he, him. At first, my students thought that he had very feminine features, so they thought that he was a girl. And this is why we should never assume somebody's gender just based on what they look like. Alright, Lincoln, say something. Hello. My students were really surprised how low his voice sounded. Don't assume.
What the f***? There's so many things about this. I don't know what to say. For one, the llama voice at the beginning that he randomly did had me shook. I felt unsafe. So many problems with it. Why are you using stuffed animals with 5th graders? This isn't pre-K. When I saw the stuffed animals, I was like, oh, he must be teaching really young kids. Guess not. Guess he's just into stuffed animals, I guess. And actually, babe, it's perfectly fine to assume someone's gender based on how they look, because 99.9% of the time, you will be correct. And in the rare occasion you're not, you should be respectful, you should be polite or whatever, but we don't all have to stop making basic assumptions that facilitate conversations because of extreme statistical minorities. Like that's just unreasonable and obnoxious. More importantly, whether you're doing it with stuffed animals or with anything else, you shouldn't be using your position of power and authority as a teacher to push gender ideology on kids who are impressionable, who have mush brains, right? Who can be very easily influenced. Non-binary isn't a real or legitimate or coherent concept. So to be teaching that to 5th graders, I would be very unhappy if I was a parent of one of those 5th graders. And maybe that's why he's deleted this TikTok. Up next, Jeffrey Marsh, the trans but not really actually trans TikToker, has thoughts on those of us who criticize the LGBT community but are LGBT.
LGBTQ people attacking other LGBTQ people is probably coming out of feeling bullied, othered, traumatized, not wanting to upset dad, not wanting other people like us to confuse the straights. And therefore, it feels like a life and death issue. Like your dad not being able to understand you and being violent with you, maybe? Yeah. Or society not getting you, society not getting us, and that putting your safety at risk. I understand all those feelings. I've felt all those feelings. Oh, by the way, it's still wrong to tell other trans people how to express.
So before I go in on this video, I will just say that some people make very extreme accusations against Jeffrey that aren't necessarily substantiated by facts, and I'm sure that Jeffrey gets a lot of like death threats and harassment and that kind of attacks, and I denounce that. I ask you guys to please never treat anybody who I react to in that way. It's really never okay, and it never helps our cause in any way. So if that was all that Jeffrey meant by attacks in this video, I mean, I guess I wouldn't have that much to disagree with. But, you know, Jeffrey referenced Blair White, my friend, who criticizes Jeffrey and other extreme trans radicals. And I think what Jeffrey really means is criticism is included in attacks. And no, babe, we're not just criticizing you because we have daddy issues or whatever. We're criticizing you because you say and do crazy stuff that brings the whole community down, gives us a bad name, and like I've covered on this show, is leading to a small but significant decrease in acceptance for the community. And here's the thing, if you don't want us to tell you how to express, well, detach yourselves, right? Like if the T can separate from the LGBT, then you go do whatever you want and I won't have anything to say about it. But as long as you're attached to my acceptance and this broader community or category that I'm unfortunately immutably stuck with and a part of, yeah, I'm going to have something to say when y'all say and do crazy stuff that gives us all a bad name and affects acceptance for all of us in the world out there and in the community. It doesn't make anybody self-hating or mean they have trauma or anything like that they criticize you harshly. It might just mean that you're saying and doing a lot of things that are worthy of criticism. Jeffrey. Up next, what the hell is a woman plus?
Hi, I'm Davey, and this is Maxine, and we have been driving with Lyft for over 6 years. And Maxine and I are getting ready to go out driving tonight, but we're going to try something new for the first time in those 6 years. We're going to turn on the Women Plus Connect feature. Women Plus Connect is a feature that matches women and non-binary drivers with more women and non-binary riders. Women Plus Connect gives women and non-binary drivers the option to turn on a preference that will prioritize matches with other nearby women and non-binary riders. Women Plus Connect first launched in September of last year in select early access cities, but now they're expanding it nationwide. I'm so excited. This feature offers more control over the driving experience for women and non-binary people, allowing them to feel more confident in the car. All right, time to get driving.
So first, I respect anybody who works hard, and that's valid work, so good for you. Doing that for 6, 7 years, whatever you said, honestly, I respect that. I'm sure it's long hours, can be tough, but I'm sure you had somebody throw up in your car at some point. So kudos to you for being a Lyft driver and putting up with people. Now that said, the fuck is a woman plus? That is the first question I have about this feature. And my criticism here is mostly for Lyft and for this policy, not for this individual. My first thought is like, how is this legal? Because driving for Lyft is an employment opportunity, right? And each gig or ride that you get is money in your pocket. It's a gig that they're providing you with. And now they're saying they're going to block men from being eligible for some jobs and opportunities. That seems to me like it would violate civil rights law. But maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. I can understand the impulse behind it, right? Because women do face a risk of violence from men. So I can understand why a woman would be more comfortable with a female Lyft driver, for example. But then that brings us to the other piece of this puzzle that doesn't make much sense. If it's women plus, which again, the is a woman plus, but if it's women and non-binary people, and non-binary, like they say it's just a feeling, just a vibe, just an aesthetic. It's just, you don't have to do anything to yourself or present a certain way. You can be a full-grown man with a beard, not present anything differently, and just say, I'm non-binary. Then doesn't that defeat the whole point of making sure that women have drivers they're comfortable with that aren't male, and there isn't that same statistical risk of violence? Because literally anyone can be a woman plus then if they just say they are and it's just a vibe. The whole thing is incoherent and possibly illegal, and I just found it very bizarre. Up next, this really extreme trans TikToker has a particularly visceral hatred for white women. So listen up, you white women out there, because you're about to get told.
Want to be a real feminist? Then you fight for everyone. You fight for Palestinian women's rights. You fight for trans women's rights. You fight for Black women's rights and Indigenous women's rights. You fight for all women's rights. You fight for everybody's rights. Because when nice white women don't check themselves and their own privilege and the harm that they're doing, everybody else is having to compensate for it. Everybody else is having to suffer for it. Comfort is not a priority. Safety is. If you want to prioritize all women's safety, then stop being a nice white woman.
So not to get geopolitical on y'all, because I don't want to alienate people, like I'm not saying one thing or the other, but it was interesting to me that this person said you fight for the rights of Palestinian women, but not Israeli women, who, let's just say, have had their rights violated as well. More importantly, this person seems to have some bizarre vendetta against white women. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but it's just strange to me that in progressive online circles, it's somehow okay to speak about entire demographic groups of people like this, because again, I've said this before, but like, y'all sound like the woke KKK. Just letting you know that, babe. That's what you sound like. More importantly, this kind of just misses the point that real life is complicated. It's messy, and sometimes we have something called competing rights, where we have one group's rights clashing with another group's rights. So there are some cases where transgender rights, as this person sees it, conflict with women's rights. And so to just say a feminist has to support all women's rights and transgender rights, it's like missing the point that sometimes you do have to make choices. You have to make trade-offs. The athletics one is a great example. You have trans people's right, which I'm not sure it is a right, but let's just say it is, because they say it is, to compete in the sport bracket of their choosing, paired with women's right to fairness and equal access and safety in sports. You can't support both rights at the same time. You do have to choose. And making that choice doesn't make you an evil person or a nice white woman, God forbid. When I see videos like this, I always remember that funny clip from Modern Family where Cam is like,
"Who hurt you?"
Up next, get ready for a lecture from another TikTok activist.
Okay, I need someone to help me out here. I'm really trying to understand this thought process. So, let me get this straight. You all don't want transgender women playing against cisgender women in sports because
Yes. Not fair.
it's an unfair advantage. They have too
Not
much
safe.
testosterone in their body. Okay,
You're dead
but
again.
on the flip side, you don't want trans children like starting HRT or starting hormone blockers too soon.
Yes. They can't
So
consent.
yeah, I guess it's
Life-altering
contradictory. So I'm
ramifications.
trying to understand that. Yeah, just kidding. It's a joke because no one could make me understand that because it literally doesn't make sense. So at the end of the day, what it
I don't
boils
think it's
down
that
to
hard.
is you're transphobic. You don't see trans women as real women because if you did, you wouldn't even be saying that trans woman beat that cis woman. You would just be saying that woman beat that woman. Okay. She was born with an unfair advantage. Okay, I'm sorry. Like, some people are born with more testosterone in their body. Yao Ming is like 8 feet tall. That's an unfair advantage. And he was born that way. Just like a trans woman is born that way. So
there's a lot to unpack there. One, I always find this bizarre when they say this, like, well, a trans woman is just a woman, so a woman is just a woman. Like, are you trying to claim that a woman and a trans woman are the same thing? Because nobody's buying that, babe. Trans woman is a perfectly legitimate concept to exist, but it exists as a different concept than a woman. And if you try to just completely conflate the two, I mean, it's just not reality, so nobody's going to buy it. I'm sorry. And I actually do get the point that this person is saying, that like if we're concerned about biologically male athletes having an unfair advantage if they transition and they want to play in women's sports, then we should allow people to transition as minors, and then they avoid that puberty that they would give them that advantage, and then there's no problem. There are some problems with this logic, though. One is that there might actually still be some differences that persist. I don't know, but it would be hard to say. I guess we'd have to see and measure it. But more importantly, if the issue about minors transitioning is their inability to consent to life-altering ramifications of sexual functioning and fertility, then that kind of trumps sports. So you like it makes sense that we wouldn't want to make that trade-off, because in the grand scheme of things, preserving a child's ability to have full adult functions and have a family biologically and be fertile as an adult and make that decision on their own when they can fully understand the ramifications, like that just totally trumps considerations over fairness in sport. So it's not really an inconsistency so much as it is a priority. And to me, it seems like a priority that's pretty commonsensical. And they always like to make this point about an unfair advantage and, oh, well, some people are tall or some women are stronger than other women or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, then why do we have the category? Why not just have all open sex tryouts for all teams everywhere? You know why? Because it's a huge categorical gulf between average males and average females that requires a separate league, because if it was all just open, may the best athlete come in many sports, few or no women would get to participate. So within women, there is variation, of course, that's part of sport, but there's two separate categories for a reason. And you are gaslighting us when you suggest that, oh, it's just another form of advantage like anything else. It's different. We all know it's different. That's why these categories exist. All right, just one left. So buckle up. If your brain cells, if you have any left, we'll try not to lose them, okay?
So last night I'm sitting here at the dinner table and my oldest daughter accidentally misgendered me. And very quickly she corrected herself. And, things just went on. But I took a second and I said, hey, thank you for doing that. It really made me feel very loved by you when you did that. And I said, I also want you to know, I will never get upset with you if you didn't correct yourself, because I know we love each other and that's totally fine. And I said, I'm okay with whatever you're comfortable with. And she ran around the table. She gave me the biggest hug and she said, you're a really pretty girl, Daddy. And she went right back to her mac and cheese and that was it. Here's the thing. Kids get it. Kids get love and they get honoring someone they love. And if it's something tiny as a pronoun, it's a big deal for me. And it is a big deal for me that she knows that there's no pressure here.
See, I threw this one in here because when I saw it, I thought it was going to go in a very different direction than what it did go into. And I think that if you found yourself in the complicated situation where one of the two parents comes out as trans later in life and decides to transition, well, that's a complicated situation we could dive into. But if you are in that situation, it actually seems like this TikToker is handling it pretty well, with a lot of understanding and grace for their child. And so I actually don't think there's really much of anything in this video to get outraged or upset about. But what do you think about this TikTok and all the others that we've reacted to? Let me know in the comments section if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or whatever app you use, please do take a second and rate and review, and maybe actually recommend the podcast to somebody who you think might like it, because that's the fastest way and the most common way that podcasts grow is through word of mouth and through recommendations. So maybe consider sending it to somebody who might get a kick out of it and might want to suffer with us. With that, don't forget to like and subscribe and yada, yada, yada. And I'll see you all in the next episode.